By the end of the Christian Middle Ages, hope for a reformed church that was based on poverty, fidelity to the Bible, and the imitation of Christ remained unfulfilled. The demand for a church renewed died many times over, in the bonfires of the Inquisition, until the Augustinian monk Luther took it up in 1517 by posting his famous 95 Theses. After a long spiritual pilgrimage, Luther came to the conviction that salvation is by grace through faith. This led him to protest against the sale of indulgences and against other church abuses. The energy that he had for theological debates gradually shifted to a controversy with the Pope and bishops. Luther got the cooperation of the greedy nobility of Germany, who wanted to free themselves from the power of Emperor Charles V. After long years of political and armed conflict, the Peace of Augsburg in 1555 was finally reached, whereby Protestant princes were guaranteed the right to determine their own religion. Another Protestant movement appeared in Switzerland, first under the direction of Ulrich Zwingli and then of John Calvin. It gave birth to the churches that we now call Reformed and the Presbyterian. In England, the Reformation started under Henry VIII, who got in conflict with the Pope about the annulment of his marriage. Under one of his successors, Queen Elizabeth of England adopted a moderate form of Protestantism. Towards the latter part of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th century, the strong convictions of various groups ended up in bloody wars, which decimated the population of Germany and much of the rest of Europe. The 30 Years' War in 1618 until 1648 was the bloodiest war that Europe had ever suffered. After several attempts that failed, the Catholic Church also arrived at her own reform, in what is called the Counter-Reformation. The Council of Trent, 1545 till the 63rd, condemned various Protestant positions, reaffirmed Catholic doctrine, and took several steps towards moral and administrative reformation of the Church. It is mainly this last aspect, the moral and administrative reformation, that turned the tide and gave a new dynamism to the Church. This reform was made possible largely because of the birth of new religious orders, among them the Society of Jesus, which became the right arm of the papacy in struggle against Protestantism. As we already mentioned, the apostolic creativity of the 5th and 6th ages are to be attributed mainly to the missionary outreach to the new continents. Saint Francis Xavier, Matteo Ricci, and Roberto de Nobili became the best-known missionaries in Asia in this period. The missionary enterprise in the Philippines went hand in hand with the Spanish colonization, which created the ambiguous union of church and state. Both Spanish civil and ecclesiastical authorities served God and the Spanish king. The protest in the 19th century of our national hero Jose Rizal is well known. He portrayed in his novels the abuses and immorality of some Spanish friars. His martyrdom was preceded by the execution of the Gomburza, the fathers Gomez, Burgos, and Zamora. After the Philippine Revolution in 1896 till the 98th, the U.S. took over from the Spaniards in a bloody war. The new colonizers patronized their own Protestant churches, while Rome sent new missionary groups to the Philippines to replace the Spanish friars. The Philippine Catholic Church had to wait until the proclamation of the independence from America in 1946 before the local clergy finally took the leadership. The Second Vatican Council in 1962 to 1965, followed by the Second Plenary Council of the Philippines in 1991, and the meetings of the Federation of Asian Bishops Conference, which is FABC, have helped and will hopefully lead to the full development of the Filipino Church.
The Tridentine Reform and the revival of religious life through the foundation of new religious orders brought a short period of renewed creativity in the Church. This new creativity led to the great outburst of missionary activity that was just mentioned. Catholic revival found expression in the new Baroque culture and in the intense search of devotional life and mystical experience. The success of this revival, which was chiefly internal, was greatly dependent on the sponsorship of Catholic monarchies with Spain in a leading role. The short period of achievement also had its struggles. King Louis XIV of France, followed by some other monarchs, declared himself as the head of state and church. Rome was helpless. France became the home of Jansenism, a distorted form of Catholicism. The strong sense of sinfulness which was taught by Augustine manifested itself in the Jansenist attitude of separation from the so-called wicked world. What became central in Christian life were self-mortification and asceticism. Its doctrine of predestination was pure Calvinism. Until recently, Catholics spiritually remained under the spell of Jansenism. A church turned inward and defensive also failed to appreciate the development of philosophy and science, which started at the time of Renaissance. The church condemnation of the work of Copernicus and Galileo Galilei caused her to stick to an outmoded worldview until modern times. Her negative response to the Enlightenment also placed the church outside the birth of a new Europe which developed without.
The close link between the absolute monarchies and the church led to a disaster when those monarchies were questioned by the leaders of enlightenment, who attempted to set people free by the use of reason. The revolutionary movement in France turned against the church and eventually promulgated the worship of reason. Similar revolutions in Latin America clashed with the Catholic hierarchy and became strongly anti-clerical. The independence movement in the United States did not turn against the church. It, however, created a new paradigm for the church-state relationship, which was separation. It took another century before the paradigm took hold of Europe, resulting in creation of our present-day democratic states.